Episode 100, Improving Your Life by Living in Sync with Your Menstrual Cycle with Jody Long.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and certified through the Life Coach School. Together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
Almost every mature woman on this earth has a menstrual cycle, and many of these women will have menstrual cycles on a monthly basis for an average of 40 years of their lives. But knowing these facts has not helped society at large come to better understand the menstrual cycle and how to track it so that women can be functioning at their highest energy level and resting at their lowest. Thus, so many women feel defeated because of their menstrual cycle and are therefore not reaching their highest potential. Coach Jody Long focuses on coaching women with ADHD and chronic overwhelm. In her work with these women, she has found that having them track their cycles and learn their body's natural ebbs and flows can help them perform better and understand themselves so they can have compassion instead of self-loathing. She and Heather talk about the importance of women tuning into their body's natural cycles and how doing so can make women the best experts on their bodies. This episode is enlightening, and it's not just for women. Men, listen up and see if you gain any insight into the menstrual cycles and the corresponding energy cycles of the women in your life.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. Happy to have you. Happy to have with me Coach Jody Long. And Jody's been on before. I always love to have people on here a second time. The conversations are always different and so much fun. Jody, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Okay. So I guess I should start by saying that I am not a menstrual cycle or period coach. I am a life coach for women who struggle with chronic overwhelm or ADHD. Most of my clients are LDS women with ADHD, and overwhelm is just kind of part of the deal when it comes with ADHD. That is the most common emotion for women with ADHD. And the reason I'm bringing this topic to you guys today is because I have found that becoming more aware of our cycles as women, our menstrual cycles, and using this information has been super beneficial to my clients. So I thought it would be worth having a podcast episode about, and hopefully it will help some of you listening. And also like to say that I am well aware that menstrual cycles and the experience of menstrual cycles varies greatly from woman to woman. And I'm thinking of all of you out there, whether you've had a hysterectomy or you have endometriosis, or your periods really don't bug you that much, or, you're experiencing deep depression or premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is kind of PMS on steroids, or whatever it may be. I have 5 sisters, no brothers, and I have seen all the things that women go through. And I'm just thinking of you and how we can use this information to make your life better. And I'm aware that we have male listeners too, but everyone has a wife, a sister, a mom, a girlfriend, somebody who has a menstrual cycle in their life. So this isn't really just about periods today. It's how being aware of your cycle and the cycles in life can benefit us as individuals, families, and societies. Like what information is right in front of us, a part of our everyday lives that we're not utilizing. And so this has been really beneficial to my clientele. So I thought I'd bring it to the attention of our listeners today.
I am so glad you did because, well, first of all, there's got to be a way for us to use this to our advantage, right? So many of us are like, oh my word, why? And I'm one of them. Why can't we just flip a switch when we're done having kids and just whatever? It is what it is. And so we might as well be using it to our advantage. And I think the education around it is the best way to do that. And I have 5 sisters too. I didn't realize you had 5 sisters. Yeah, that's not very common. So
no, that is not common.
No, not at all.
And we all know growing up with sisters, your cycle syncs, right?
Yes. Yep.
So that was fun.
I've done a little bit of study around this, but not a lot. And so I'm excited to educate myself today as well.
And I don't want people to get overwhelmed. Like I said, my clientele gets overwhelmed pretty easily. And all of you women out there, you've got a lot on your plate. And I'm not someone who's like tracking my cycle like super finitely or whatever. I'm just generally aware of it. But I find it so fascinating. So I recently got an electric car and I was driving in it and just thinking, you know, we can send people to outer space and we have electric cars. We can like fly through the air across countries, but the society largely ignores something that has existed since the literal beginning of humankind, a menstrual cycle. Literally, it is something that has affected women since the beginning of humans. And this isn't to like harp on society, make it a men versus women thing or anything like that. But having a period is still, there's so many stereotypes around it in our society still. And it's actually, for such an advanced society, quite taboo in a lot of ways. And so I think it's just time to be like, how can we use this information to better our lives? If society's not going to jump on board and make it easier, then what can I do? And what I mean by society is like, if you think about the way society is set up in general, generally, you're supposed to perform the same Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And then you have a similar kind of manual for how a weekend should go. And then rinse and repeat the next week and the next week and the next week. And then when you do not have the same amount of energy, the same amount of mental clarity, the same amount of creativity, or the same amount of pain and discomfort, let's beat ourselves up about it and say, I'm just a sucky human and I am inconsistent. And what is wrong with me? But there's an underlying reason for all of it. And we can use that information to better our lives. So half the population is built in cycle creating physical, mental, and emotional. It has ramifications, right?
Yeah.
So Heather, let me ask you, what do you think are some of the stereotypes that, and we can only speak for our society, but like,
yes,
that goes around about periods? To say anything, and not even just stereotypes, like anything funny, any things that you notice in our culture.
Yeah. Like it's gross. PMS, like, oh, she's just crabby today.
Yes.
She must be PMSing. Just like that it's something we need to, you know, like you should never talk about it. Like in my house, I have one boy and my husband, and it's like, oh, change the station if a commercial comes on. Like, we don't need to watch that. Like, I'm like, never mind the fact that there's 4 women that live in this house. Right. But anyway, no, I just think, and I could go on and on and on, but I think those are probably typical stereotypes. And they're probably not even stereotypes, but just thoughts and experiences around it.
I mean, how many nicknames could we come up for your period?
Oh yeah. And
Shark
Flow, Week. Yes.
Anti-Flow.
Uh-huh.
The red coats are coming. I don't know. I heard that one on a British show, but like, there's so many like things that we could say. And we as women perpetuate these things too. And it on surface level, it doesn't seem harmful. And I do it all the time as well. And there's also things like I went to a hockey game with my son, who is a hockey lover, and my husband. And I was on my period and I had to make the whole row stand up to go. And I was like stuffing a tampon in my pocket. And my husband's like, hide the contraband and all of this stuff. And I'm like, really, let me bring it back to the fact that on average, every woman has 40 years of menstrual cycles. And that is 5 to 7 days every month that you are bleeding. And that's what I tell my sons. I say, listen, see, here's the thing. I even have to apologize for saying these things on the podcast in case it offends somebody, which I don't think I should have to. And I hope that I don't. I'll put this the best way that I can, but I say, what would it be like for you if you bled from your body 5 to 7 days every month? My boys who are 12 and 16 were like, wow, that would be really challenging. And I could see the compassion in their eyes, and I can like even feel it now. And they are so tender to me, and they were to their sister when she was at home more. And it just hit me, Heather. We know generally like when a rough week is going to be for us in our cycles, but we do not alter what we expect of ourselves. And in fact, we're hard on ourselves. When I want every woman to learn the awareness of their cycle, and then to say, let's say when that PMS time comes, we're going to say, oh, I'm going to be a witch this week, or we're going to be cranky, or mom's PMSing or whatever. How about instead we say, I'm bleeding. Like, what can I do to take care of myself? This is my self-care week. How can I make my schedule more lean to support myself? And that varies. For some people, the week before their period is classically when they're emotionally struggling. For me, it creates depression, and I just would, from my own experience, I would just be like, why am I like this? Why can't I do more? And then the week of my period, I feel super weak and sluggish. But yet, I'm going to bring it back to this again. We expect ourselves and others expect us to be the same and to perform the same. But this is a cycle that has been since the beginning of humankind and will never go away. So why aren't we using this information? And what is our attitude towards it subconsciously as women? And I want everyone listening today to hear me when I say, we can use this information to better your life. And please be kind to yourself. Take good care of yourself.
Such good advice. And it was interesting when you said, and I consider myself to be pretty open-minded, open to perspectives. But when you made the statement, I'm bleeding today,
right?
This week, like I felt myself be like, ooh, like that. I don't like that statement. So we have, whether we know it or not, we definitely have preconceived opinions about it. And that was an interesting thing for me to just experience when you said that.
Very good point. And so like, I could even feel it too. My concern was more like, how am I making the listeners feel? And that's a really interesting question to ask yourself, listeners, right now. Like, do you have kids in the car and you turned it down?
Yeah.
Or did you want to turn it off and pause it? And I don't say this to condemn, but it's really good awareness to say like, yeah, why? Not every single, but the majority of women across the whole world for all time bleed. Let me say that word again. And I think that's why it was so powerful when I mentioned it to my sons as well. This isn't just about educating women, and it's about making men who have largely been the societal structural creators throughout history. That's not a condemnation. It's just a fact, which is why we're set up that way. Like I was talking to my husband last night and he's like, yeah, not all men are the same, and men do have hormonal fluctuations, but generally they're more easily able to be consistently emotionally the same every day versus a woman. But we see that as a downfall. And the problem, Heather, is it becomes a moral issue and something we can beat ourselves up as women because we're not performing like that. Whereas it's just kind of asinine to expect that of ourselves.
Once again, so fascinated by this conversation, but I've just been reading some more about masculine and feminine energy and some of the work of David Data, I believe is his name. Anyway, he talks about society's need to kind of suppress, like we have this look that, yes, we should suppress our femininity and we should just like, we tend to honor the masculine. And in doing that, we have this need for there to be polarity, for there to be masculine energy, for there to be feminine energy. That's where attraction, that's where polarity comes in our society. And somehow in trying to take away the femininity, we are creating this imbalance in connection. And I think this is very much indicative of that, this conversation here, right? Like this is something that's so feminine and so part of the feminine society and the hormonal influx and the ups and downs and the flow of hormones is a very feminine energy. And in trying to subdue that, we really don't do ourselves any service because we are getting rid of a natural polarity that exists in the universe.
Yes. What could be more natural? What occurred to me when you were talking is, do you know what words came to mind when I considered what it requires of a woman to deal with this? Grit, determination, strength to deal with 5 days a month of bleeding.
Yeah. Which is very much considered masculine energies.
Yes. Yeah. I just thought that was an interesting kind of, comparison.
That is interesting.
But yeah. And then in some ways we're just fighting reality. And I think the overall word I think of when I consider menstrual cycles is the word hide.
Mm-hmm.
Hide the tampons, hide the blood, hide your words, hide your weaknesses, hide your difficulties that come because of this thing that was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the dangers of this, Heather, is that we are subconsciously conditioned that consistency means performing the same every day. And when that doesn't happen, it can become a self-esteem and even an internal moral issue. Can I share a client example really quick?
Oh, I would love it.
This is just very basic. Like I said, it's one of the many skills or just kind of the tools in the toolbox that I teach my clients, because I think if you're a woman, why not? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I had a client come to me. This is a common thing that pops up. And the school year had started, and she had this kind of, once my kids got on the school bus, she had this morning routine. Wasn't super rigorous, but she was really happy with it. She liked it. It made her feel accomplished and set up for her day. And a couple weeks into the school year, she had a session and she's like, today after I did part of it, I just laid on the ground and I just felt so blah. And I just couldn't make myself do the other parts of my routine. And she was so defeated. She's like, I am not a consistent person. I am like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I think a lot of women right now are thinking, I think I'm pretty aware of my cycle. And I think obviously we are quite aware, but I asked her, do you think that you have different energy or, maybe feeling differently kind of because of where you are in your menstrual cycle? She was like, yeah, actually, I think I am. But it wasn't the obvious weeks. It wasn't her bleeding and it wasn't her super PMS. And I talked about it and I said, it might be valuable for you to kind of step back and evaluate that. And she's like, yeah, I tend to not have a lot of energy at this point in my period. And I said, so maybe you are very consistent. Mm-hmm. What can we learn if we take a closer look? And I said, instead of right now making everything in your routine concrete, why don't you just make your job to step back for a month and to observe, when do you have high energy? When do you have low energy? When are you most creative? When do you feel most enlightened? When do you feel like you're best at planning? When do you quite honestly feel like you just don't want to do anything? When do you feel physically drained? These are the things that if we can just even at a basic level become aware of, we can then plan our lives and become who we want to be because of it. It is very critical information. After that, every session, she would say, I taught my daughter when she started her period that this is the week that you need to be gentle with yourself. What can we do to take care of ourselves? And they did a facial. And I thought, how great is that? Like, that's passing down generations instead of being like, this is the week that you're going to hate the world and whatever. And I feel that way too. Like that we shouldn't ignore that. This isn't about being like, I love my period. No. This is about really kind of embracing the reality of what we deal with and then using that information. And then every week after that, it's just become incorporated into her coaching. It's not the main focus, but it has helped her. She said, Jody, I just can't believe how much it has helped me. And I believe it because it's helped me a lot.
Yeah, there's this piece of compassion that we're able to let into our lives. It's almost like we need a reason. Unfortunately,
oh, yes.
We need a reason. We need a reason for us to explain why we are feeling or behaving a certain way. And I wish that wasn't the case, but it is. And so having these reasons and understanding offers us the compassion that we need in order to live from the space of understanding and be the person that we want to be. Like, we can't ever show up how we want to show up if we're constantly beating ourselves up and not having compassion for ourselves.
Right. Exactly. And I think when we add like a religious culture on top of it, I know a lot of people listening are LDS, as I am, but then it can become like, let's say that you have a calling and you need to plan a lot of things and your cycle pretty well. And you know that this week is when you have the most brain fog, you have no energy, everything overwhelms you. Then you will know I'm going to delegate a lot, or we're going to have a meeting next week when my creativity is high. And some of you may think can you really get that exact? And I'll tell you, I am just kind of a basic tracker. Okay. I have pinpointed, for instance, and everybody's different, but I know the week before my period is very difficult for me. And I have learned to say, I can get through this because I know next week, 3 days, almost to the dot, when I start bleeding, I have a rush of ideas and I can pump out so much content for my business and all of these things. And I'm able to pause and say, no. I know in a few days, I'm going to knock this out of the park. Right. And I can't really express how much that has helped me. And it has allowed me to say, okay, now is the time to sit back and take care of myself so that when that time comes, I'm at my best.
Mm-hmm.
And
so would you call that like living in sync? Like what?
Yeah, I
hear
think
people
so.
talk about that, and living in sync in your life and in your cycle. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, I very much think that that's the word. Like you're just, I'm not going to say society's ever going to change or anytime soon to incorporate a menstrual cycle, wishful thinking, but we can do it in our lives. And from that consistency standpoint, what I'm teaching my clients is, okay, if you're learning about your menstrual cycle and you step back, okay, I call it the hill of curiosity. You go up on that hill because right now we're always in the weeds, right? We're down in the weeds. We can only see right in front of us. And if you go up on the hill of curiosity and you're looking down at your life and you see, oh, so if I look at my life as a monthly cycle, I am quite consistent. The first 2 weeks of my cycle, I'm most productive, and then you start planning like that. Guess what happens? You do not give up on your goals. Instead of at 2 weeks, my client saying, I'm just inconsistent, they change their beliefs about themselves. No, I am a consistent person. And then you push through those difficult weeks and continue with your goals. It's a game changer. Mm-hmm. You progress instead of constantly halting yourself and staying stuck.
It's like you're having this long-term perspective versus like this every day-to-day perspective. Long game versus,
or like a weekly.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I feel like my life is like, especially if you have like a work week or kids in school or something, it's very much a week
right.
For me, a weekly cycle. And a month isn't that much longer to look at, right?
Yeah.
And we sit as a business owner, maybe you sit and sometimes plan certain things at a month level.
Yeah.
So this would be very applicable to people. But yeah, I mean, it's just like anything else in causal coaching is that you're gaining awareness of a reality that's already there. Mm-hmm. And you are saying, how can I use this information? And what is my current attitude towards this? And how can I educate myself and my family? And then that's how we raise society to another level overall.
So I'm sitting here thinking about me who is, I've had a hysterectomy. I really have a hard time being able to track maybe what, like once in a while I'll think, maybe this is where I am in my cycle. Because I still have my ovaries. So, like I still have the hormonal fluctuations there, but then there's people who are on birth control. There's people that's hard to track. And also maybe some people think, well, because I'm on birth control, maybe they're thinking I don't really have a cycle, which is not true, right? The hormones are still there if they haven't. But anyway, I'm just curious about that. Do you have any tips?
Well, I mean, I think the same concept applies. I don't know if I'm allowed to, I'm not really promoting this, but I use a specific app that makes it really easy to track. And it asks you, it'll keep track of your period for you. And it's been really spot on for me, but even not your period, you track your moods. It'll say, it gives you lots of really quick options. It literally takes like 20 seconds and you can, even if you're not bleeding or anything like that, you can be like, it asks you if you're having headaches, if you're anxious, apathetic, like it has these options just to push really quick. And then it kind of generates information for you. And so you can kind of get on top of it that way. But even on a bigger scale, including men and women, how many cycles are there in nature that are an example to us of when to slow down, when to speed up, I think, and this is my personal opinion, that God would let us know you are not supposed to be the same every day, all day. There are times in your life, there are seasons for doing more. There are seasons for one thing that I think is very underutilized in coaching and in life in general is an information gathering phase. Like with this same client, when her kids were going back to school, she had a day set up, and then she was frustrated when her kids were homeschooled before. And so when they went back to school, she had like the way that she wanted their evenings to go, and it wasn't going that way. And I said, why don't you take a month and to do an information gathering phase and adjust. And then once they've been in school for a while, you'll know what is the ideal routine for you. And not that you take all routine out of the day, but just understand, instead of getting frustrated, it makes sense that during this information gathering period, you are figuring out what works the best. Mm-hmm. And so I think if we have the information gathering aspect, this is what I'm asking people to do, or I'm suggesting or recommending with your cycle, right? But that can be applied to anything. Are you in a phase in your life where you're not really sure where to go next? And so you feel stuck and frustrated. Well, can you take a step back and say, no, this is a great time for me to kind of chill out, be open to answers, be prayerful, be mindful, and be excited about possibilities. Is this a time when I have physical illness happening? I can learn to take better care of myself. We need to forget about who deserves and doesn't deserve things. We have a human body that needs to be taken care of. So I just think the overall, for me, it's very damaging to think that I should perform and be the same every day. And I don't think that's what's intended for us on a spiritual level, on a physical level at all. I think we're supposed to have a broad spectrum of experiences, and we know that intellectually, but we expect something completely different from ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought that back to just creation in general, or anything in our lives. If you look at the earth that our heavenly parents have created, and the cycles of the seasons, and knowing that we are created divinely, there's no way that we would have been given the influx of emotions that we have, the hormonal influx, if it wasn't to be to our advantage, to be of use in some way for us. It's just not something that, knowing the God that I believe in, that's just not how it would work.
Right. And I think I just kind of, I don't know everything about God, obviously, but I think he just kind of is probably entertained, or our heavenly parents are like, why aren't they using these cycles more? Like, I mean, it's been happening for a long time. When are they going to start like being easy on themselves? I mean, gosh, they're bleeding. That's kind of a lot. Like, it's just like, just some of the things that we ignore from day to day are very interesting. And that's another thing to bring up that doesn't have to do with the menstrual cycle, is like, what in our lives is really information right in front of us that could be really useful. Mm-hmm. And, we teach in coaching that take a step back and look at the situation. Let's be like a social scientist, is what I always tell my clients. Like, what are we observing? What information are we taking from this? Let's take the drama out. Let's take opinion out, and be like, if you were looking at yourself and observing your own life as a social scientist, like, what would you see, and what information is right in front of you that is really useful, but that you can't really use because there's so much emotion around it, or you're just used to it, right? I have a lot of ADHD clients, like I said, and we tend to really not notice things in our environment that have been there for a long time. For instance, if I have a return to a store, it literally could stay there for 6 months until I can't return it anymore. I have a lot of that happens. And so this is a concept that's already something I teach ADHD clients that's applicable to everyone, is like, notice yourself. Stop trying to live like someone else. Get to be the professional, the expert on the way that you do things, the way that your brain works, the way that your body works, and start using that information. So that's a concept on a different level that applies to all humans, right? Is just, if we see each other as unique beings, yes, there are things that apply to all people, but the more I do this work, the more I realize how valuable it is to really just be the expert on you. Mm-hmm. We can take
for so many reasons, right?
Yes.
So many reasons.
So many.
It helps us live at this capacity that we that we don't even know that we're capable of. It frees us up to not judge other people or ourselves if we are only worried about living at our capacity. There's just so many reasons why it's so important.
Exactly. So that's just kind of the general way of how I see this as a valuable concept on the whole. And then at the level of the menstrual cycle, and I would encourage everyone to just be more comfortable talking about it. And have you ever seen the TikToks and reels of the girlfriends teaching their boyfriends about things like tampons and things?
I haven't.
They know nothing. they or like they'll ask this a guy, how do you think we wear this? Like a pad.
Uh-huh.
They do not know. And a lot of you men out there, like my husband's exceptional, my boys are great, like I get it, there's lots, we have made progress, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But these videos have reminded me that it's so taboo still. Come on, let's just really kind of do our part to just bring it out into the open. Not that we have to tell everybody, but just in our own lives, become more aware of our attitudes towards it and how we can better educate ourselves and those around us. It seems silly, but it's such a big thing that could make a big change.
Mm. Gosh, thank you so much for bringing this to our awareness and educating us, because obviously there were plenty of things I needed to be educated on today. Sometimes I think I know everything. Imagine that.
I doubt that you think that, Heather.
Actually, the older I get, the more I'm like, oh, I know nothing.
Yes, I know nothing.
I know nothing, and I don't want to know anything. Actually, I've decided I don't. I
don't need more.
I don't need any more.
And it's humbling, because it's humbling and exciting at the same time, because sometimes you look back at what you used to think and you're like, oh my gosh, am I that way about things now?
Yes.
I know nothing. So yes, yeah. I know what you mean. But anyway,
true.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, it's been great talking with you too.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I would love for you to share with our listeners where people can find more of you. And we will for sure link to it in the show notes, but I would love for you to share it with them.
Sure. It's jodylong.com. So it's pretty easy. Jody with the Y. And on Instagram, it's Jody Long Coaching, and Facebook the same. I'm mostly on Instagram. It's pretty easy to navigate and book a consultation for free. We have lots of fun. We laugh a lot, and I'll take good care of you. And mostly I work with clients in one-on-one sessions as part of a program that I have called the Firm Foundation Program, which is really kind of using all the tools that I have to decondition and then rebuild a foundation based on, the self-coaching model and other tools like your menstrual cycle, being knowledgeable about it. That's just one aspect. So yeah, jodylong.com, Jody Long Coaching.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's listening today. I'm going to give a word of warning to any men that might be listening. Let me just tell you, don't share this with your wife and be like, oh, you need to listen to this, or whoever it is, in a way that they're going to be like, what's wrong with me? Because we know women have a tendency to do that, right? Like, what are you trying to say?
Be aware of where she is in her cycle before you share. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. No, but honestly, like, we all know we all have women in our lives, right? We're women. We have daughters. This is something that we need to share. And so share it with those that you love, and appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us today, Jody. It's been awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a good one, everybody. And we'll see you again next week. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.